Yeah, Noah, thank you for joining me and talking about Hookworm. Um, it must be, so is it around 5 years ago that you shot the film now in 2017?
Yeah, I think it would have been around this time as well because it was just after we finished wrapping that it was actually my birthday as well, which is at the end of March. So almost 5 years now. This
That's crazy.
month.
Happy birthday. Preemptively, happy birthday.
Thank
And
you.
where did the idea come from? Obviously, if on the film course, you have to pitch usually at the end of second year. Had you been thinking about this concept for a while before that, or did it come about when you were racking your brains about something to pitch?
Um, yeah, the idea had been in my head for like most of my time at uni. I think like the first version of Hookworm, even though it was completely different, uh, began kind of at the end of first year. I think when I was starting to think about, oh, maybe in the summer I'll write something and make a short film, but that never happened. But I then kept revisiting the script, completely rewriting it, not keeping anything from the original drafts, and just kind of completely remolding it. But the name kept, just because it was vague enough that it kind of could keep applying to this story. And I think what stayed the most was the kind of the body horror elements and the genre. Was I wanted to make something that was a little bit creepy, kind of psychological. I think the original versions had a lot more kind of supernatural horror elements to it,
Oh,
which kind of died out in the final version. But
oh,
yeah, it went through a lot of changes. It um, kept evolving until the final project.
yeah. And at what stage did you bring Cara, Weatherly, your producer, on board? Was she, I guess, championing it up until like for the pitching process as well, or how did you go about approaching her or knowing that she was right to join you on this and making it?
I think we had a couple of conversations when we were thinking about working together on another project earlier in our final year that never happened. But it meant that we were talking, and then when it came time to start discussing who would be working with which producer, I think we literally just kind of sat down one evening and just said, "Hey, like, do you want to throw around some ideas?" And we just immediately hit it off. And yeah, I can just say now this entire project would not have been possible without Kara. She was an amazing asset to the team and helped reel in all of the insanity, helped put everything on paper, lay everything out, make everything possible and practical. There's no way this film would have ever happened if Kara wasn't there. And I think I knew right away that we had made such a wonderful decision by deciding to work together because we kind of perfectly balanced each other out. It was a wonderful meeting of fate.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. And how did you go about um so around that pitching process, what was that like? And did you have, I guess, visual references at that stage? Did you have a DOP on board for the pitch, or did Han come in like later on?
Han was on from the very beginning because we had worked together earlier that year as well. And I think we shared a taste for precision and minimalism, but also a slight kind of sense of surrealism in the kind of color palettes and things like this. So yeah, very early on, we were looking at lots of interesting um, visual references. I think Gaspar Noé was one of the first references. We used, as well as Wong Kar-wai for the color palette. Um, then I think it was a matter of looking at a lot of my influences were body horror. So David Cronenberg was a huge influence on just the weirdness of the film, and I used that to kind of establish the tone. Um, the pitch was mainly about trying to show that like we weren't trying to create like something that was gratuitous or too um, over the top. It was going to be understated. So when we said we were making a horror film, we were trying to kind of like twist the genre into something that wasn't just a kind of slaughter fest, a bloody mess of things. And we were trying to kind of find that fine line where horror has a little bit of meaning to it, and it serves the purpose of the story and kind of delivers more of a kind of heartfelt emotional message rather than just aiming to kind of scare and disgust people.
Yeah. And then I guess the next stage as well, or jumping forward towards like production, is how did you go about the casting process? And yeah.
So for casting, I think we cast a very wide net. Um, we just kind of sent out as many kind of prompts to as many people that were interested. We visited multiple websites, and whoever would send us a tape, we kind of then invited for a kind of like online audition, essentially, where we just talked through the character. And then eventually, once I found Elsa and Natalie, we met up in London and we did a couple of scenes there just to kind of see if the chemistry was important. Because from the very beginning, what I wanted is two people who felt like they'd been married for a while. That was really important to me, that their on-screen chemistry really worked. So we did multiple kind of pre-taping scenes together just to see if they actually kind of felt believable as a couple. So that was wonderful. And then also throughout the process of filming, we had them live together as well, just to ensure that they were kind of getting to know each other and were comfortable. And also during the intimate scenes, we made sure that the filming was very like stripped back. We had as few members of the crew actually in the room as possible, just so things would feel very natural for them as well. But they got on really well. And I think it was almost from the first audition tapes, I kind of knew that those two were the ones that I wanted in the film.
Yeah. And what's your approach as a director with the cast and the performance? I guess, how is the script and the dialogue, I guess, sacred, or is there movement there, or how did you approach that?
Well, I was lucky enough that I was working with two actors who right away they kind of took it on as their own work as well, and they really felt that, you know, they were embodying these characters, so they weren't afraid to let me know if they felt that something didn't seem natural or could be changed or made better. During the actual filming process, the script was always fluid. That was what I wanted as well, was that we were never reaching a point where we're like, okay, this is how it has to happen. I think even on the actual days of filming, we were still seeing if we could tweak things, we could change things, we could rearrange things. It wasn't so much a process of adding anything. I think what it was more about was removing dialogue that we felt was too expositional. At the end of the day, this was a film about two people in a room. And so anything that felt like it was talking to the audience instead of these two characters, anything we felt that was kind of a little too forced or expositional, if we could remove it and the story would still make sense to the audience, they would still understand what was happening, we would cut it out. So we weren't afraid to kind of trim the fat, essentially. But we were doing that right up until like the day we were filming things. If we felt we could get rid of it, we would. And yeah, that's, I think, what one of my favorite accomplishments of the film was that we were able to remove so much of the context and the exposition, and yet the story still makes sense.
Definitely. And then people say you make a film 3 times, you write a film, you shoot a different one, and then you create a wholly different one in the edit as well. With, I guess, stripping back in the actual filming of it, how consistent was that with your final edit? Did you remove even more, or was it kind of, yeah, what was the edit process like?
The editing was about, I think, again, it was how much did we want to stick to the conventions of a horror movie? Because I think, again, as the script went through and the editing went through, it became less and less about the horror aspects and more about the dramatic aspects. So the first cut, we had a lot more moments that were designed to be kind of building the tension and creating this horrific atmosphere. So I think when we saw the first cut, we realized that actually we need to linger a lot more and we need to build a different kind of atmosphere, something that was a bit more tense and a bit more slow burning and relied less on kind of what you would expect from a classic horror movie in terms of the cuts and the sound cues. So that was an interesting learning process. Jacob, our editor, kind of had to rethink his approach to it, because I think he had spent a lot of the time preparing to edit a horror film. And we then kind of took a dramatic turn and said, well, actually, what if we make it more, I guess, melancholic, I'd say, or perhaps just a bit more kind of tender. But he loved that and kind of took on that new brief and completely redirected the film in the edit. But a lot of it was still true to what we had envisioned. We had storyboarded quite extensively the film beforehand. We visited the location and we knew what shots we were going to get. So we, even before we had started filming, Jacob kind of knew what he was going to be working with by the time the film was wrapped.
Great. And then, so when the film, you've got it picture locked, it's graded, everything's done. What was your initial plan for getting it out there to audiences beyond your kind of BFI premiere? Obviously, we'll get on to how it's reached audiences through streaming. But yeah, so what was that initial plan? And was that factored in, I guess, in the production process and pre-production process of this is where we want it to go, or this is the audience that we're making it for?
This is actually, I think, one of the biggest problems that Cara and I ran into, which was how we really market this film. Because we had opted to kind of not stick to a particular convention and found ourselves kind of somewhere in the middle, we found it quite hard to kind of decide a direction to take it in the marketing and the taking it to festivals. I remember we kind of shopped it around to numerous horror short festivals that we, after looking at them, kind of decided, well, it doesn't really fit into this category. So that kind of left us in a slightly weird kind of gray area where I think we stumbled for a little while, kind of understanding where it belonged or where we should kind of try and find an audience for it. I think that is one of my regrets making it, was not kind of finding a kind of clearer place that it could sit in the kind of genres. But yeah, it seemed to find a home on YouTube somehow, completely unbeknownst to me. That was where its destiny lay.
Yeah, that was such a, so I was working at the film school when we started to put the grads films kind of publicly up on the YouTube channel, and yours was, I think, one of the first batches of grads that we put on there. So it was a 2017 grad. I think maybe it must have been in 2019 or 2020 that the films went up. And then most of the grad films, I say, get under, say, 1,000 views or so. I think I remember reaching out to you when maybe you hit 5,000 or 6,000 views. And it was kind of like, oh wow, you're like, this is doing so much like better than these other films. Like, that's so interesting, especially like, I guess, following on from what you're just saying in that your previous answer around not knowing how to market it, and essentially on YouTube people can just discover it organically, and then obviously it's gone to bigger and bigger audiences on there. What was that a shock to you? Was it kind of, did you feel like it going on YouTube was almost like a, I guess that it wasn't going to lead anywhere necessarily, or a few people might see it who maybe think about applying to the film school, or yeah, what was your reaction to it?
I mean, originally when it was on YouTube, I had, there was always that initial fear of putting something out that you've put so much work into, and now it's just available for the entire world to see and analyze and criticize. And so, I mean, I was always so aware of its flaws, or to me, its problems were always so obvious because I was always looking at it as how it could be improved upon. So the initial nervousness, once it went out there, of course, and it barely got any views, it kind of subsided, which then almost a year later, when it finally started kind of gaining traction, the panic kind of came back in and, oh no, all these people are going to see this. But I think what's amazing is, for me, is not the numbers or the amount of people who've actually seen it, but the positive feedback that I saw in the comments and the likes, and just reading those one or two messages of people who seem to really actually resonate with it. That was such a unique feeling, because suddenly for the first time, it was someone who I didn't know, who didn't know me or anything about the creation of this film or the story behind it, was just seeing it completely fresh and without context, and enjoyed it, or at least found something in it that they connected to. And for me, that is worth so much more than any number of views on it. That was so unbelievable to see that someone from across the other side of the planet would watch something I've made and find something in it that they liked. That was wonderful.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was looking through comments the other day when I realized that he's got over 5 million views, and I kind of messaged you like, we took our eye off this for a little while, and suddenly it's kind of skyrocketed all over again. But yeah, those comments and complimenting the how great the writing is in it, like to the direction, and that these comments that have said this as well and specified this have also then gone on to get loads of likes themselves as well, of other people agreeing with it. And it's such a reinforcement of the good work that you, Ankara, Han, Jacob, the whole team managed to do with the film. I guess that leads on kind of to a question of around short films and distribution in general. So if you were to make, say, another film, or someone that's going out, let's say, I'll edit this bit because that was really, really clunky. Wow. With distribution in mind and how you you did look to do, I can't talk. All right.
Is it right?
For students in their final year now, what would you say to them about their kind of distribution method? Because obviously you've tried a few different methods there. It has found a home on streaming, but is there any advice you would give to people looking to get their shorts out there in the world?
I would say don't be afraid to put it out there, because the worst thing you can do is be ashamed of something that you've put lots of love and effort into. And I mean, the worst thing that happens is nobody watches it and it just gets forgotten about, in which case there's no harm done. But getting used to seeing things and, you know, receiving criticism, the internet is such a horrible place sometimes. But that one moment where you finally see someone who you don't know that has connected with something you've done is such a special moment. So for advice, I don't know what I can tell you in terms of distribution that would help you be seen by many people. All I would say is just keep putting things out there, because the reward you get, that feeling inside when someone resonates with your work, is so special. And that can be such a powerful driving force to push you on to making the next thing, because then maybe the next thing will get a couple more views and you know, go a little bit further than that. But yeah, I think I was completely naive and ignorant when it came to distributing films. Like, I had spent so long focusing on the making of it and the pre-production and the actual construction of the film, that once it came to the bit of like, okay, well, now how do I push my film out there and like let the world see it? I had no idea how to do that. So I'd say if you can if you're already someone who has a YouTube channel or has a following somewhere on Instagram or on any other social media platform, like, use that to your advantage as well. Like, make sure that, you know, you're not just focusing on one end, but you're kind of pushing it across the spectrum. Because nowadays people don't just have to be one kind of creator. You can make your way on multiple platforms, and you know, you could be a filmmaker on one and a photographer on another. Yeah, I don't really have great advice for that, because clearly, like, I don't think I did anything that necessarily made this this film blow up in this way. But yeah, my advice is just keep creating.
Yeah, no, I think that is great advice, and great advice to end on as well, on just, you know, not being afraid to put yourself and your work out there. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining me for this short interview about Hookworm. Yeah, good luck with everything you're going on to do in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.